What is going on, gunfighters? Welcome to Gunfighter University. That is Gunfighter Life Podcast. Let's talk about guns, gunfighting, tactics, survival, all the right way with Almighty God at the center, Judeo-Christian values, and real-world, first-hand experience. Today we're going to be talking about my go-to survival rifle. And this, I am kind of reluctant to do this because I'm kind of aware of the fecal storm that this could unleash. Because there's going to be so much. Some topics are just so passionate and so many people have so many opinions. And I'm not telling you your opinions are wrong. I would ask you to honestly listen to my opinions and my reasoning. If you disagree, that's fine. I'm not so arrogant as to think that everybody has to agree with me. But I'm going to talk about my go-to survival rifle today. In keeping with that, I am going to plug in the bio to establish some bona fides, to establish some street cred for why you should listen to me at all. Because if I'm just some dude on the internet who's only ever shot these guns on, I was going to say Mortal Kombat, that's an old video game, whatever the new video game is, right? You should question, why are you listening to this person? For that reason, God has blessed me to do a lot of things, and I'm going to put that in the bio. Then we'll get into my go-to survival rifle. I'll roll into a quick abbreviated bio and then into the main topic. First and foremost, I am a Christian. I don't apologize for that. God is number one in my life. I grew up hunting and fishing in the backwoods of the southeastern United States at a very early age. Some of my earliest memories are with firearms. I joined the Marine Corps at 17, did a couple of combat tours in Iraq. By God's grace, He got me through that safely. After that, I served as an instructor, an urban warfare instructor and a desert warfare instructor for the United States Marine Corps. I also served with the LAPD, both full-time as a sworn police officer and in some more specialized assignments, as well as serving in the U.S. Army, full-time and part-time National Guard. I've been a FBI firearms instructor, still am an FBI firearms instructor, have been for a lot of years, also NRA certified and some other three-letter government agency certified. I've been a private contractor for a three-letter government agency I won't specify. I've been the commander of a tactical team in a large metropolitan area. By God's grace, He got me through all that in one piece, not because I'm better, but because He chose to have grace and mercy on me. I've been a professional hunter and guide. Professionally hunted things like buffalo and elk. Not many people today can say they've done that, but I'm blessed to be able to say that I have. I've hunted everything from white-tailed deer on the East Coast to mule deer on the West Coast to gray squirrel on the East Coast to prairie dog on the West Coast and elk and bear and wolf and slain all manner of beast. A state rifle and pistol champion a few times over in a few different disciplines. Now those experiences, it's not because I'm bigger or badder, certainly not bigger. In fact, I met one of the patrons in real life and he said something to the effect of, I thought you'd be bigger. Reminded me of that William Wallace movie where he's like, oh yeah, if William Wallace were here, he'd shoot lightning bolts out of his rear end. Well, I'm not William Wallace, but I am the person that did all those things in the bio. But not because I'm bigger or badder. I don't think that I survived when many other young, good men did not. I give all the glory and all the credit to God, all the talents and experiences that He's given me and the things that He's let me live through. I hope to use them to glorify God and to help you today. So if I boast in anything, it's not in my strength, it's in that God had mercy on me and saved me because He had a purpose for me. And hopefully I can use those talents, skills, and abilities to serve you today. All right there, gunfighters. Are you ready to hear about my choice, as of right now, for a go-to survival rifle? You guys said you wanted some more philosophical episodes, so here we go. Let's get into some philosophy. Let's do some philosophizing on apocalypting, on survivaling, on the end of the world as we know it, man. Okay, here is the deal. We're talking about a survival rifle for a broad spectrum thing. I don't have TV. I haven't had television in a long time, but I remember a show called Doomsday Preppers, and of course they did that for entertainment and drama, but they would often have them say, I'm preparing for, peak oil in 2012, or, that dates that are probably long past now, or I'm preparing for martial law being declared. I'm preparing for a solar flare in 2014, whatever, right? I'm not doing that. I don't see the future. I don't know the future. There is stiff penalties in the Bible for false prophets. I don't know the future. I don't know what the future holds other than what God says, and that is there will be a great tribulation. There are things that go into that great tribulation, but that great tribulation could be tomorrow. It could be 1,000 years from now. Civilizations rise and fall. America could come and go as we know it long before that great tribulation, right? Unless you make the case that America is Babylon, which is not good in Revelation. There's no mention of America as far as we know, as far as I can tell in Revelation. So America could be long since gone by then. We could be crumbled. That to say, I don't know what specific scenario. I'm not preparing for the elections are going to turn into mass civil unrest and martial law is going to be declared in 2024. Again, I'm saying I'm not specifically prepping for that. I'm not prepping for artificial intelligence create some kind of intelligent zombie mutant strain of spider monkeys with body armor. Whatever, so just realize that. And let's take a deep breath. Because you can, what if this scenario? And but what if that scenario? And if you give me a specific scenario, I can probably give you a more specific, better choice. So don't try and fit what you've chosen for a specific scenario that you think is going to happen, because unless you see the future, you don't know what's going to happen. And I don't know what's going to happen. I started out this series with my go-to Survival 22, and I said that a Survival 22 would not be my primary choice. It would not even be my secondary choice. It may be my tertiary choice. Now, the reason it may be my tertiary choice is if there were specific scenarios, I may choose that. But that's a specific scenario thing. I might choose a 22 long rifle if I have to bug out a super long distance on foot with no resupply. That's a specific scenario. If I had to choose one long gun, it wouldn't even be a rifle, right? So there's that. But we're talking about today if I was choosing a rifle, and I do have a go-to survival rifle. What is that and why? So again, we're talking about broad spectrum. And in pretty much any survival scenario, I bifurcate it. I split it into two main categories. You've got putting food on the table, and you've got defense, right? Defense. Defense of yourself or others from people trying to do serious bodily harm or kill you or somebody else, right? You have those two big categories. And I think it is foolish to prepare for one and not the other, unless maybe you're a pacifist and you're like, I'm okay with eating a quail, but I'm not okay. I would never use force on another human being. I'm not here to convince you of that. You're probably not listening to Gunfighter Life if that's you, but unless that's you, there's probably two main categories. And unless you see the future, you don't know which one you're going to need first or more or less. You should probably be ready for both. Also, let me start with this, because a gun does not solve every problem. I talk about guns because this is a gun-specific podcast. I have a vast experience, more than most people in real-world experience I've been blessed with guns and firearms and tactics. But if you said I had to head off into the unknown apocalypse with a single-shot shotgun and a water filter and being in really good shape and cardio, or I could have the most coolest tactical loadout with any gun that I wanted and body armor, I was going to be fat and out of shape and no water filter, I would choose a single shot shotgun and being in shape and having a water filter, because that's probably much more likely to keep me alive than the coolest, most tactical gun. You look at weapons. Weapons have changed vastly from, let's say, the ancient Roman Empire to today. And any great warrior culture throughout history. The Zulu, the Crusaders. But you know what's important throughout history? Physical fitness, discipline, courage. Those things are much more important. So don't think that you can just get a gun and check a box and you're good to go for the peanut butter and chocolate hitting the fan. That's not what I'm saying. All right, is that enough? Because I know there's going to be a lot of disagreement here. Is that enough caveats? We could proceed one of two ways. I could tell you what I didn't choose and why I didn't choose that, and then lead up to what I chose and bury the lead. A lot of people do that. Or I could start with what I chose, and why I didn't choose other things, or why you may want to choose other things. Okay, Scar 17. Scar 17, I've had for years. I wanted it for years before that. Just couldn't really justify it. And when I was the commander of a tactical team to stop active shooters, and I was going to get it for an actual working gun, which I used as an actual gun in real life. Not like I just took it to the range, like I actually used it on missions. I sold several other guns to get it, including a Galil, including several other guns went into the purchase of that. It's not a cheap gun. Probably even less cheap now with inflation. But the Scar 17 in 308. They're long past the 3-year mark as I talk about proven reliability by that point. I'm not going to get into the history of the Scar 17, but it's a well-proven platform. It's also fairly lightweight for a battle-proven 308, 7.7 pounds. Full-powered rifle cartridge. I did not go intermediate. I did not want a 223 for this. Now, there's sometimes on missions where I would take a 223, 5.56, but I think for this, for the end of the world as we know it. Again, no other caveats. Not like, yeah, but I live in a people hive and I got to carry all my ammo in a Prius. No other caveats, right? Like, no other things. End of the world as we know it. I wanted a full power rifle cartridge. We go back to putting food on the table. I've been a professional big game hunter and guide, not just theoretically, I'm going to go out and hunt food. Like, I actually done that professionally. Live off grid. Been hunting and doing all that stuff since I was a young boy. I also choose to normally, not right now because I'm hopefully doing something to help somebody else. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. But generally try and stay west of the Missouri, even west of the Mississippi, west of the Missouri, far out west where the population density is not high. This is like Montana, northern Idaho. So I don't think hunting deer is feasible long term anywhere east of the Mississippi. Look at what the deer population went to during the Great Depression or even before that. Look at what the population was then versus now. But, out west, there are still places with very low population density where you can supplement some of your food with hunting. 308, can you shoot a deer with 223? Yeah. Can you shoot a deer with 7.62 by 39? Yeah, you can. But it's not as good as 308. It's just not. It will work. It's not good. 308 is a good deer round. It's not the best. There are many other rounds that are ballistically better. We're just talking about hunting. You can make the argument that 7mm .8 ballistically is better, or 30-06 has some advantages, or many others. But 308 rather. 308 is a good medium to large game hunting round. It is good. It is also a decent tactical round. There are many military, police weapons chambered in it. Whether you're talking about a 240 Golf, 240 Bravo, medium machine gun, M24, M21 rifles, any number of weapons. It's a NATO standard cartridge. It's readily available. It's common. It's a decent tactical round as well. And again, I don't think the 308 is the best round ballistically. There are a lot of rounds, quote unquote, better for specific niche applications, for sure. And if you give me a specific niche application, I could probably name you 2 or 3 cartridges better than the 308 for it. But the 308 is a really good broad spectrum, do it most round. You might consider it like the Ford F-150 of rounds, of rifle rounds. Does it get the best gas mileage? No. Does it have the best BC? No. Is it the tiniest, most compact for parking at Target in the city or whatever people do? No, it's a pain in the butt. Does it have the best power to weight ratio for tiny bullets at high velocities? No, it doesn't. Right? It's not the best at really anything, but it's a good general purpose. If you could only have one, the 308's pretty good. It's good in tactical applications, and it's good for putting food on the table. If you're talking about large game, talk about small game, again, that goes into why my first choice for a long gun for the end of the world is not a rifle at all. But we'll put that on the table for now, for this episode. And can we agree that 308 is a good all-around cartridge? Again, if you say, I'm just hunting elk in North Idaho, is it the best cartridge for that? No, right? 280 Ackley improved would probably be my choice for that. But that's not the only thing I'm using this for. Probably don't want a 280 II for tactical applications. It's also because of mass production. It's a very affordable round for the power that you get. It's not cost prohibitive to shoot. There's a lot of different bullets made for it, both tactical rounds and hunting rounds. There's bonded bullets. There's broad spectrum of weight range, although I pretty much stick with a pretty standard weight range. But you get the idea. It's readily available. It's tailored for a lot of different applications. It's an affordable round to train with. It's powerful. Not as powerful as many other rounds, but it's a good balance. So for that, I think 308 still is the best choice. Now, 6.5 Creedmoor has covered a lot of ground in the last, let's say, when did that come out? 2007? It's been around longer than I thought, but especially in like the past decade, it's gained a lot of ground. If you wanted to choose 6.5 Creedmoor, I don't think it's as good for some things, but I think it's better at other things. So if you wanted to choose a 6.5 Creedmoor, I wouldn't fault you for that. So let's say I wanted a 308, right? And if we're talking about broad spectrum, not just hunting, I want semi-automatic. Can I run a bolt fast? Yeah, I can run a bolt fast. I can't lay down the amount of firepower that I can with a semi-automatic. You know, if you look at World War II, it was the M1 Garand. As far as full-powered rifle cartridges go, I know that the Russians had, the SVT-40, the Germans had one, but for mass issue, most troops having a semi-automatic, that was us. And as much as the Kar 98 was a good rifle for its time, and the Mosin Nagant was definitely a good rifle for its time in the 1890s, right? They are not as good as an individual infantryman weapon as a semi-automatic rifle. Semi-automatic is better than bolt action. Bolt actions are pretty obsolescent when it comes to combat unless you talk about specialty use. This is not a specialty use scenario. This is like the opposite of that. This is a broad spectrum. Maybe I'm taking one shot at a deer to eat it. Maybe I'm trying to stop a pickup truck full of bad guys ramming into a perimeter that I'm trying to protect. I don't want a bolt action for that. A broad spectrum. So I wanted a 308 semi-auto. Now there are several, and I wouldn't say that you have to choose the Scar 17. It took me a lot of years before I got a Scar 17. Scar 17s are expensive. I think they're worth it, but they're expensive. If my life and other people's lives depended on it when I was commander of a tactical team, and they did, I didn't want to go cheap. I wasn't like, what's the cheapest thing that might work? Let me trust some little girl's life to that. That wasn't me. Scar 17, I think it's worth it, but it's expensive. And it's not the only factor, right? You got to buy ammo, you got to get training. So there are some other really good choices. Let's talk about some of the older choices. Now, one of my first real military rifles, other than the M16, was the M14. And the civilian version made by Springfield, the M1A, you can get a Fulton Armory if you can find a cool old Polytech. Those are pretty cool. But that M14 pattern, it's a good rifle. But it suffers from two main things that most of these older Cold War era battle rifles suffer from. And calm down if you've just got a walnut thing and it's got to have a walnut stock or it's not a real rifle. They're heavy. What's a naked, regular sized M14 M1A weigh? 9 pounds? And I said naked. Sans optic. No optic. It's a heavy rifle. Scar 17 weighs 7.7. Also, and many of the Cold War, I'm not going to pull up all the weights for like a HK91 or many of the other guns, a G3, both of which are totally rugged, reliable guns, a FAL. They're all rugged, reliable guns. They suffer from another big crutch. Optics mounting. And I mean good optics mounting. I don't just mean a hashtag #MeToo optics mount. Like, oh, look at me, I'm an optics mount too. Like a rock solid optics mount. A good optics mounting system, because optics weren't really a common thing. I know they existed, but they weren't common on an infantry standard rifle. I mean, when I went to Iraq, OIF-1 for the invasion, I joined pre-9/11. I was in Kuwait waiting for war to be declared or for us to invade. Above my pay grade, as they say, I had an iron-sighted M16A2. By my second deployment to Iraq, which was not that long after my first deployment was over, after we fought from Kuwait and took Baghdad and went home for some R&R and went back pretty soon after that, I had an ACOG. And that was before everybody got issued an ACOG. I was an expert rifleman, got issued an ACOG. And that kind of tells you the time frame. But many of the standard infantry rifles before then, they were not really thought of in a optical arena. Many of those older rifles, right? I like the book Patriots. It's a great book. The HK91, M14, M1As, they're good rifles. And I really like the M14, kind of because I have quite a bit of experience and, let's say, nostalgia with it. And I love iron sights. I love good, accurate iron sights. And the M14 has some of the best iron sights on a modern 308 combat rifle. But optics are a force multiplier. I still want good iron sights because optics can break. But while you have them, they're a good force multiplier. And many of those older ones, like the M1As, and I know people love the M1A, and again, I like them too, but liking something is not going to make up for an inferior platform. I really like a Willys Jeep, right? But it's kind of outdated. A Willys Jeep is not my daily driver. Would it be cool to have and drive on occasion? I guess. I'd probably rather spend the money on something else. But they're really cool. But they're not going to keep up on the highway. Going back to that F-150, carburetor's kind of cool to work on and tune, yeah, but not when it's super cold and you got to get somewhere in a hurry and I've got to tune my carburetor. Again, they're a little dated. Are those older Cold War battle rifles in 308 cool? Yeah, they're cool. It's a FAL cool rifle? Sure. And can you mount an optic on them some kind of way, workaround? You can, but it's not as good as a dedicated, flat, what we've come to standardize on 1913 rail system. Right? It's not as good as that. So they're heavy, many of the other choices, and they're not great for mounting optics. It can be done, but they're not great for it. Also, accuracy. Now, sample size of 1. My Scar 17 that I am blessed to own, that God bless me with that rifle, that thing is crazy accurate. I think it is more accurate than, I would say any, but I sold all but one of my bolt action 308s because I'm not a gun collector. But even when I had multiple 308 bolt rifles, it was more accurate than my bolt rifles, and they were good bolt rifles. That thing will touch them. It will cloverleaf rounds in a group. It's crazy accurate. Not even talking about custom hand loads. I'm talking about factory ammo. It will cloverleaf them. It will put them in one big ragged hole. And you might think that the M14, the M1A is crazy accurate. You can, if you do a lot of work to them, make them accurate, acceptably accurate. But they're not, I don't believe, anywhere near as inherently as accurate. And looking at something like a FAL, as much as people love those, or, an HK91 or a G3, you might be talking about a 2 to a 4 MOA gun. Is that accurate enough? I don't know. Depends on you. A 2 MOA gun's probably accurate enough. But again, a more modern gun is going to be, in general, more accurate. Guns have gotten more accurate over the decades. In many cases, not in all cases. So the big one would be, why not an AR-10? And I've said this before, maybe controversial. I'm not a big fan of direct impingement, and I know an AR is not technically direct impingement. It's the gas piston is the bolt, but most people call it direct impingement. Let's, for argument's sake, call it direct impingement. I don't like that system. I had a catastrophic failure with it in Iraq. I've seen other guns have catastrophic failures. I don't like the system. It's okay. It has major advantages, especially in a CONUS environment, especially in an environment where you can keep it kind of clean. That's probably not the environment we're talking about for this. I don't want a direct impingement gun, which means I'm looking at a piston AR-10, which do exist, but they're proprietary. If I'm going with a proprietary AR-10, why not just go with the SCAR 17? Right? The only real advantage you could make for an AR-10, in my opinion, is, until recently, the only argument you could make is their direct impingement. They're going to be a little bit softer recoiling, which I'll give you that. But I don't like the operating system as much. I don't think it's as good for like a long-term grid down scenario as a piston system, a simple, robust, really rugged piston system that I think as the SCAR 17 has. A really rugged, robust piston system, kind of like an AK, but with the accuracy of an AR-10, or maybe even better. That being said, there is a new contender on the market. It will probably hit that 3-year mark soon, and that is the SFAR, the Ruger SFAR. Now, that one is direct impingement, but it weighs 6.8 pounds. That's quite a bit lighter even than the SCAR 17 at 7.7 pounds, right? So there's some advantage there, and it seems to be a pretty good rifle. My issue with it, I don't think that it's chrome lined. I want, especially for this application, I want a chrome lined barrel chrome bore, which the SCAR has and the Ruger SFAR I don't think does have. But again, I wouldn't fault you for that gun. It's lighter, and that has a big advantage. Also, it's quite a bit cheaper. So that would also be a really good choice. And the AR-10s in general would be a good choice. If I were picking an AR-10, I would probably pick a piston gun. And if I were picking a piston gun, I'd want a really good one because they're proprietary. I want a really good proven system. And to me, if I'm doing that, I'm just going to go with the SCAR 17, which I did. But if you wanted to go with something else, I wouldn't fault you. One of the major advantages to that is you can use the kind of more, and they don't all use the same magazine, but there's a semi-standard AR-10 pattern magazine. SCAR 17 magazines are pretty expensive, so that is a downside. I'm not going to lie. Anyway, for those reasons, that is my go-to survival rifle. Now, I mentioned you might want to choose something else. I would caution you to choose it based on logic and reason and your skill level and ability, not emotion. Like, you couldn't make a case to me other than you just really like it, or you already have one and you've got a bunch of training with it. You served with it in, I don't know, the Greek military. I don't even know if they use the FNFAL, but a lot of NATO countries did. So let's just assume you had a bunch of training with a FAL. But if that's not the case, you could never make the case to me that the FAL would be a better rifle for this than SCAR 17. But again, if you wanted to choose something else, I wouldn't fault you, and there are other really good choices. Let's talk about how I have it configured. Real simple. Again, it comes with really good backup iron sights. If I only had the iron sights on it, I would be okay with that. I would rather have an optic because it's a force multiplier, but if the optic goes down, I'm good with those iron sights. They're good iron sights. I have a sling on it. Nothing special. I don't even remember what brand it is. It's a good 2-point sling. I have a good optic on it. I have an LPVO, Trigicon Acupoint 1-4. The only thing kind of special about that optic is that it's tritium fiber optic. It doesn't take batteries, but it's still illuminated. I don't like things with batteries because batteries break. I don't care how long they say the battery life actually is. If it gets super hot in the back of your car, if it gets super cold because it's crazy cold where you are, the batteries don't work optimally. I don't want to rely on that. So, tritium fiber optic, Acupoint. I also could have went with an ACOG, but I like the Acupoint because I can dial it down for CQB, urban warfare type stuff, and I can dial it up to 4. And you might think 4 is not a lot of magnification. 4 is plenty of magnification for anything I've ever needed, outside of varmint hunting and small game hunting. But for large game hunting, I know this bucks the tactical trend. You got to have a giant scope and shoot out to 1,000 yards. But in all the big game hunting and guiding I've ever done, I've never felt undergunned with a 4 power scope. It's a 1-4. And you might think, why not like a 1 to 10? Well, one, a lot of those take batteries, and a lot of those are giant and obese, and I'm adding I think the cost benefit on the weight and the complexity is not there. Trijicon Acupoint 1 to 4, and it's not just something I picked by happenstance. It's a good optic on there. I like it on there. The other thing I may have put on there would be like an L-can, which you can look that up if you want. I'm not going to get into that. Or I would have just put on a fixed Trijicon ACOG, because I think the ACOG, because it's not variable power, it is more rugged. Not that the Acupoint is not rugged, but I think the ACOG is more rugged. The thing is, it's a fixed power. So again, I could have went either way on that. I can shoot, and I almost always shoot both eyes open. Rifle, pistol, shotgun, both eyes open. And I can shoot both eyes open with a magnified power optic. A lot of people have trouble with that. So again, it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. I have the Acupoint on there. I would have no problem if I'd have stuck an ACOG on there. Let's say a fixed 3 or a fixed 4 power ACOG would have been fine as well. It is illuminated, which I do like. But even just a fixed 4 power like SWFA scope or something like that, a fixed 4, a fixed 6, that probably would do fine as well. Rugged, dependable. Not some crazy big optic, not a 3 to 9, not a 4 to 12, nothing like that. But simple. The other thing I have on there is a white light on the front. It's a rechargeable. And I just said about batteries. But while it's on there, and when it runs out, I can literally take it off and throw it away. It's easy to put on, take off. I think it's literally one flat head screw. I take it out, I throw it away. Don't care. If I have it for urban type stuff, for CQB type stuff, a white light is nice. If I don't have it, if it stops working, I throw it away. It's a couple of ounces and this is a gun that I have ready. But for normal times, I like to have a white light on it. Again, if we live in a world without batteries, I'll throw it away. No big deal. But pretty simple. Not a lot of space junk on there. Anyway, that's the way I have it configured. Now, let's revisit the intermediate cartridge. The intermediate cartridge has an advantage. The big reason that the military went to it. This is the debate we're not going to settle here on this podcast. I'm not saying that my choice is right for you. I would say the intermediate cartridge has as much merit as a full-powered rifle cartridge. Our military and many other militaries went from full-powered rifle cartridges to intermediate rifle cartridges. A big reason for that is you can carry more ammo, and I totally will concede that that is true. And this is something I haven't really talked about on the podcast, I don't think, because I don't want you to take this the wrong way. And remember what I said in the bio, I don't think that I've accomplished any of this stuff or have these talents because I'm better than any other man that didn't make it, or because, I'm somehow of my own volition a snowflake. But there are different kinds of personalities. There are different kinds of personalities in a gunfight. There are guys that mag dump. I have been in combat. I am not one of those guys. I'm not saying that doesn't work. I'm not saying there's not a time that you shouldn't do that and break contact or whatever. Is it psychologically effective to spray a bunch of rounds down range? It certainly can be. And I've had rounds fly over me. And I've had rounds coming back at me. And it is psychologically a thing. But it's also effective to make well-aimed shots that count. And I generally will wait till I have a good shot. Again, I'm not saying that the other people are wrong that do different things. I might be side by side with a dude and he dumps a bunch of rounds and another dude dumps 1 or 2 rounds. I just did a podcast, and again, tactics and training and stuff is more important than the gun. But part of that is know thyself. You probably don't know what weapon you should have if you don't know yourself and how you're going to react in that kind of stressful environment. But I think I have a pretty good handle on it as far as my personality in those kind of situations. And I would rather have less rounds that are more effective round per round. I'm not saying that choice is right for everybody. I don't think that it is. I think some people are better served with an intermediate cartridge. intermediate cartridges have that advantage. You can carry more ammo. Each round, in and of itself, in general, I mean, if you make a headshot with either one, it is what it is. But in general, each round per round, is less powerful, is potentially less effective. But you get more of them. That is a real, honest trade-off. We see the Army now looking at the 277 Fury and maybe going back to, and that's a full-powered rifle cartridge. You can say whatever you want, but it's full-powered. It's a little bit smaller diameter, but it's a full-powered rifle cartridge. So there is no, it's a trade-off. And I'm not even saying my answer is better. But I choose a full-powered rifle cartridge for this. Are there scenarios where I would take, like if you were giving me one of those more specific environments, are there ones where I would take an AR-15 over the SCAR 17? Yes, there are specific things when I would do that. Going back to the commander of a tactical team, because I had the freedom, I was the commander, I wrote the policies. Right? It's one of the reasons they hired me, to write the policies for what guns we could use, when, and where. There were some missions I would take the SCAR 17s. There were some missions where I would take an AR-15. There are some missions where I would take a recce rifle AR-15, and there's some where I would take an AR-15 pistol. What the government would call a pistol, I would call it an SBR, but legally a pistol. Right? There were certain situations where I would take an AR over the SCAR 17. The SCAR 17 is not the best all the time. Again, we're talking broad spectrum. I don't know you. I don't know how you're going to react in certain environments, and I don't know what environment you're in to start with. I'm not saying that you're wrong for choosing an intermediate cartridge. I'm not saying you're wrong for choosing an AR. ARs are far more common and popular. And if it's what you have and it's what you have training with, and you want the more rounds on tap, more rounds able to be carried, I'm not going to fault you for that. I'm not going to even say that you're wrong. I'm just going to say, I choose a 308. If you choose a 5.56, I don't think my choice is even better than your choice for you. The AR or other intermediate cartridges, they have their advantage. You can carry more of them. Also, I don't care how good you control recoil. If you reduce it, you can get rounds on target consecutively faster. And that's just a reality. I don't care how big and bad you are, how fast you can shoot a SCAR 17. If you reduce the recoil, you can get multiple hits on a given target faster. Unless you're talking about just right in front of you and you're not even aiming. But any kind of intermediate or long distance, you can get follow-up shots on target or on multiple targets quicker with an intermediate cartridge. Again, I don't care. That's just how physics work. Can I shoot a SCAR 17 fast? Yeah. Can I shoot an AR-15 faster? Yeah. I can. It's got less recoil. That's how that works. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. For every single round out of the SCAR 17, it's more powerful. It packs more punch. I also get more recoil, reaction into my body. Again, it's a compromise. So just take that into account. And many people for this would choose the AK. And the AK, I think, as an intermediate round, and I've talked about this before, the 7.62x39 is perhaps one of the best intermediate rounds. It's kind of past its prime. I think it's kind of a dying round here in the U.S. in that, look at the cost of it. The days of mass surplus here in America for cheap 7.62x39 are long gone. You can get it. It's an affordable round, but not like it was. Not like when you could just buy Spam cans of it for very cheap. Also, the AK, it's a great rifle. I talked about when I had a catastrophic failure, meaning not a regular malfunction, not something you could fix in the field. Like, my M16 broke during the invasion. I, for a time, had an AK-47, and that thing didn't break. Right? I like the AK. I've said I really like iron sights, but an optic is a force multiplier. Again, can you mount an optic on an AK-47? You can, but not well. I think it's a great rifle. I think it's not even what I think, it's the dominant battlefield rifle of the 20th century going into the 21st century. It's a phenomenal rifle. You talk about street cred, it's got it. You talk about rugged, reliable, lack of maintenance, forgiving, It's got that. It's a phenomenal choice. It's not my choice, but if you chose it, I wouldn't fault you for it. Is it arguably even a better battlefield rifle? Yeah, for sure. It's a great battlefield rifle. But unless you expect the end of the world to be like Red Dawn, hopefully it's not one big giant battlefield. Again, I've been to war. I hope the entire future is not like that. It's a horrible, horrible thing to see. May there be short periods like that. Again, if you gave me a specific scenario, if you gave me, urban warfare, battlefield rifle, or in the jungle, no maintenance, but that's not what we're talking about. Don't pick a specific scenario because you want to justify the rifle that you have. Look at a broad spectrum. That's what we're trying to do here. And if you do that and you pick the AK-47, I would say it's not a bad choice. The cartridge is decent. It's a decent, if you want to go the intermediate cartridge route, it might be the best ballistically sound intermediate cartridge. It has both advantages and disadvantages of the 5.56, which I've talked about ad nausea in an entire episode. But it's a good choice. The big things to get it for me are it's fairly heavy for an intermediate gun for what it is. It's, again, a little bit dated technology. Still a good rifle. Also, the optics. Can you mount an optic? Yeah. Can you mount a good optic well? Not so much. Is it okay for deer? It's okay for deer. In fact, the SKS growing up is kind of like the poor man's redneck deer rifle because they were dirt cheap back then. And a lot of deer have been shot with 7.62 by 39. It's an okay round for deer. Okay being the word there. It's not good. Again, the 308 is a good round for deer. And again, I'm not even saying it's not a good choice. I think the AK-47 is absolutely a good choice. I'm just saying I didn't choose it. If you choose to, then leverage the assets that gun has. I already recorded an episode. It hasn't come out yet because it's going to have to take some major editing just because some audio issues. But fire extinguisher guns. Right? Remember, know thyself. You might get mad at this, but the AK-47 was made for a peasant army. It was made for a conscript army of not really well-trained people. The Russian Empire is vast, and it equipped a lot of other people that spoke a bunch of different languages. And can a good, well-trained soldier, warrior, be more effective with an AK? For sure. Also, it gets used all the time by little boys in Africa. And that's a sad thing, but it works. Because it's a simple, easy to operate gun. So if you're somebody without a lot of training, if you have this as, let's call it a fire extinguisher gun, break glass in case of emergency, you're going to go take it to the range and zero it and do a little bit of training with it, but you're not really a gun person. You're not going to train a lot with it. There's a big advantage to that AK. It was kind of designed for that. You know yourself and you know you're not going to clean that gun. Again, don't shoot corrosive ammo through it, but AK kind of lends itself to that. So, again, know thyself, right? That's an important part of this. So, anyway, that's kind of my pick. The other one I want to talk about is the Scout rifle. That is the other 308 that I have. It is a Ruger Scout rifle. For years I wanted to try the Scout rifle concept. I tried it this past year, took a deer with it. It's a good concept. Again, I think that bolt actions for this are obsolescent. If you were talking about a more tailor-made scenario, like that's not a combat rifle. The Scout rifle, despite what some Scout aficionados might imagine that it is, it's not a combat rifle. It wasn't designed for that. It was designed for scouts. If you were in a scouting type environment, long periods in really remote areas, bolt action rifle has some advantages. If you get detected and get on a 1 versus 6 to 12 guys, like a man versus a squad ambush, you're not a very good scout. Being a good scout has to do with fieldcraft. In a scouting environment, a scout rifle makes sense. But don't live in a people hive and expect to be a scout. That's a pretty niche, remote, rugged country, spotting the enemy, reporting, or just if you want a rugged backcountry rifle that has really good iron sights, because sadly, a lot of bolt-action rifles today don't even come with iron sights, which I think is a sad state of affairs. If it's a specialty hunting rifle, fine. But if it's a go-to hunting rifle, I think it should have iron sights. The Scout rifle does have iron sights. Now, there's a Ruger Scout rifle. I like that because it's controlled around feed. But there's also the Steyr Scout rifle and many others. If you live, again, I said training is really important. I would rather you have a rifle that you trained with all the time, some secret gun you have stashed in a safe that you can't bring it out because you're going to get spanked by Big Brother government. There are a lot of places where you can't have, where you've been so infringed that you can't even have. Let's call it 50-year-old Cold War technology of a full-powered battle rifle. If you can't have that, but you can have, a bolt-action Scout rifle, then that might be a good choice for you. I'd rather you have that and be well-trained with it than some uber cool tactical gun you have stashed away in a safe that you can't even take the rein and train with because you're afraid of going to Club Pen, going to the federal penitentiary for exercising your right guaranteed to you by the Second Amendment. And you might think that's not right, and I'm not here to say right or wrong. I'm just saying if you live in one of those places and that's you, I would rather have you well trained with a bolt action like a Scout rifle than a rifle that you don't train with. So for those, let's say, states where you've been brought back 80 years or so in technology due to malum prohibitum, prohibitive laws that aren't evil, the thing is not evil by nature, but it's prohibited, then you might look at one of those as well. So I thought I'd throw that out there. So anyway, talked a lot about my go-to rifle for the end of the world, for survival rifle. Again, I know this is going to kind of be controversial. Please leave me some comments if you want. If you listen on Spotify, there's a thing where I say, ask me. And again, just because I pick this doesn't mean that you have to. Doesn't mean that it's the best for you. I'm not so vain and arrogant as to think that my choice is the best for everybody, and if you pick something else, you're stupid. I don't think that. So hopefully remember, love your neighbor as yourself and be respectful if you disagree. All right, that's enough, I think, for this episode. If you like this show, if you like this episode or another episode that made you think of somebody else, maybe share it with them. As the Bible says, no prophet has honor in his own country. Maybe you're trying to get somebody into guns or get them listening to podcasts or something else. Oftentimes you telling them something is not as effective as somebody they see as an expert, even if you've got more experience than me. A lot of people don't really listen to people they know because they don't want to look foolish, but they'll listen to somebody else. It's just, again, no prophet has honor in his own country. I'm not a prophet. I'm just saying if Jesus' own brothers, before he rose from the dead, had issues believing in him, you get what I'm saying there. So you might want to share this. Consider sharing this with somebody else. If this was a blessing to you, blessings are meant to be shared. Kind of the prime directive of this show and Alpha Male Podcast is to make godly men strong and strong men godly. Anyway, consider sharing it. Also, consider becoming a patron. Patrons get a lot of content that you're just not going to get. Patrons get a lot of content that's only for patrons. If you want to get in on that, if you want to be part of our insider chat and talk to a group of like-minded men, not just about guns, but about many other things. And there's guys there that know a lot more about special things than I do. I don't pretend to be an expert in everything. If you're talking about rebuilding a carburetor, I'm not your guy. But there's guys in there that know how to do that pretty well. If you need help with like vehicle recovery, which I did a few weeks ago, and I was blessed to be part of that chat. The guys in there that are experts at vehicle recovery. So there's a lot of really good resources in there. It's iron sharpening iron. One man helping other men. Again, consider becoming a patron. Consider sharing the show. If you haven't already, like, subscribe, leave a review. With that, the tactical tip of the day. We talked about rifles today. How about a tactical tip for handguns? This is something we did a lot back in the day, before there was all these plastic fantastics, when you pretty much were choosing between a Glock, and I remember when M&P came out, and I was like, ooh, let me try that. And I was like, oh, Glocks aren't that good anymore. But anyway, back in the day before there was a lot of options and before you had all this different grip texturing, something we would do is skateboard tape. Skateboard tape, grip tape, can do a lot on a handgun if you want a better grip. If you have, like, let's say a Gen 3 or whatever Glock, or any handgun, even the older Gen M&Ps, they didn't have the best grip texture on there. They weren't very aggressive. You can take some grip tape if you don't want to stipple your gun, which you can do that too. But you may want to put the grip tape on there first and make sure you like the grippier texture where you're going to put it, because it's not permanent. Take some of that grip tape, cut it out, and put it where you want it on the gun. If your thumb rides, high on the frame, maybe put a piece of grip tape there. You want to put grip texturing on the front strap. You may like it on one side of the grip and not the other. It just, again, know yourself. And then that'll help you know your weapon. But that grip tape, just because there are a lot of guns with better grip texture than there used to be, you still might find a use for that grip tape. So that skateboard tape, that grip tape, you can still use it. It's still a good thing to have if you want more aggressive texturing on your gun. Anyway, with that, let's roll into the tactical verse of the day. I'll call this one of the core concepts for men. Therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. I didn't grow up a Christian. I'll be honest, when I was younger, I kind of saw women as an object to be used and discarded when I was bored with them. That's not the proper core concept. And if you do that, it will leave you lonelier. I don't care what culture and society says and how much they tell you it will fulfill you. It won't. It'll leave you lonely and empty. We talked about the ammunition and kind of the two philosophies. Do you want quantity? Do you want more ammo that's less effective? Or do you want the round to be more effective? Women are not in that category. They're not ammunition, right? You want quality over quantity. Trust me. You're supposed to be joined to your wife. Core concept. As a man, you will be fulfilled more by providing for, protecting, and being joined to your wife than chasing after a bunch of women. Core concept there. With that, thanks for listening, and have a blessed day.